There. It's just flashing red, or it's solid?
solid red.
That's what we want. Okay. We should be.
You there?
Am I there? I'm
Thank
just.
you, Gil.
Yes. Thank you, Gil.
And Jim.
It's your presence.
Yeah.
Somehow your presence
I scared it.
scared it into
There. It's just flashing red.
Set us on the lid.
Okay. Once again, we are here.
Enjoy, kids.
Once again, we are here by the skin of our teeth. Hold on as I get my notes. I would explain what happened, but why? Just so glad you guys can be here with us. And if I can log into my notes, that would be great. If not, hey, I'm good. Welcome to Take Two. And welcome Alex with us.
Hi.
Our special guest here. Yep, I can't do that. If you don't know, on Wednesdays we talk about what I spoke about on Sunday. And Sunday was an interesting topic leading into the holidays, leading into Thanksgiving. I thought it would be good to talk about gratitude. And so that's the journey that we want to take us on. Really, the whole point was to get to talk about how do we get joy in our lives. And joy seems to be one of those things that everybody wants and is looking for. And what a lot of times we try to do is find things that make us happy. And we think that's going to get joy, right? So I need circumstances, I need the new car, I need the better job, I need the, handsomer husband. You already maxed out on that one.
My joy cup is just to the brim.
So, but those are the things that we do to try and get joy, and they never quite work. They bring a temporary happiness, but they don't bring joy. And so that was kind of what we wanted to do, to find out what it is that we need to do to get joy. And so let me start off just with that and the idea of how important is joy in our lives? Let me ask you that. How important is it for you?
That's an interesting question. How important is joy? It's super important, whether you're like trying to actively pursue it or whether you happen upon it. It's like it's a relationship that I think you have with the emotion, but it's something that I think you're always striving for in your relationship and your work and in your just being, right? So I think it's a universal, regardless of whether you have a relationship with God. Joy is something that people can relate to, and they're
Right.
always searching for it, right?
And, with it being that something that's kind of paramount in our lives, it's not then unusual that Jesus said, I've come that you might find joy and that your joy would be full.
Right.
And that even John, his disciple, said, I'm writing these things so that your joy could be complete. And so God is interested in joy. He is interested in providing joy in our lives. And then it becomes, okay, so how do we connect with what God is wanting and what we are wanting? What is that ingredient? And that's where a number of people I've read, and of course throughout Scripture, talks about being thankful, gratitude. Brene Brown talks about, joy is connected to this idea of gratitude, and how a lot of times we try to, find joy and be grateful for it, but really gratitude is the pathway to being joyful. What is your experience on gratitude and joy and them being connected? Have you experienced a connection between the two, or what is that?
I think what was really interesting to me is in your sermon, you were reflecting a lot about the opportunities that you had to be with your mother, right? While you guys were going through that entire season, and finding yourself in moments of gratitude, saying like, thank you, God, that I get to spend this time. Thank you, God, that I get to do these things for my mom and care for her in these ways. And then the fruit of that was joy, right? And I can relate with that so much, especially in the passing of my grandfather and the things that I was grateful for. Like, I got to feed him. Thank you, God, for giving me the opportunity. Thank you for my job that gave me the flexibility to be there and spend time and allow some alleviation for my mom and her aunts, right? To come and be there with him. And then from that came the joy. Like, my goodness, like what an amazing opportunity that I had to sit there by his bedside and learn. And so it's I think a lot of the times you don't necessarily know that that's going to be the fruit of, right? So that like
Right.
gratitude, that joy is going to be the fruit of that, because especially in moments that are a little bit more uncomfortable, like those that we were facing, you know, you don't think that the outcome is going to be joy.
Right. You're kind
Right.
of surprised by joy.
Yeah,
right?
you're
It's-
absolutely surprised by joy. And I remember when I was going through all of that, I told Brian, I was like, Scripture has new life to it in ways that I hadn't experienced before. You know, consider it all joy, right? The trials all joy. Like, I'm like, I had no idea what that meant
Yeah.
until you experience that lived, you know, experience. So,
It starts doing something deeper in you. You know,
yeah.
it's so interesting. I had a conversation this afternoon with a friend who's going through some really difficult times, really questioning their faith because of hardships. I mean, one of the things that they said was, you know, I don't know if it's worth it. Jesus is asking too much of me. Asking me to give of myself and to love others, and knowing their story, they've been hurt by the church. Their
Right.
family has been hurt by the church in really terrible ways. And so they are like, I just want to be around the people I love, my family. I don't know if it's worth doing this. And this whole thought of, you know what I want for you? I don't want for you to look for, you know, your faith. I don't want you to look for these things. I want you to look for the things that you're grateful for. And the times that have been filled with that gratitude. And they started remembering times, even parts of the church where it was difficult,
Right.
that they were like, oh, I was grateful for this time where I got to connect with these people. I'm grateful for my children. I'm grateful for these things. And their kids were running around acting crazy while we were doing this live stream. And they're like smiling at their kids, and like their son is like, he always hurts himself, and then he comes running to me. And then, you know, it's like this. And I could just see the smile on their face, and I see joy in their life. I
Right.
go, you know, look what's just happened. Your son is interrupted, caused these things, but you're so grateful for your son that it overrides all these things, and I see joy in your life.
And I think what's so cool about that too is it's a shared experience, right? Joy is something that is very intimate and you can experience when you're alone with God, but it's also a very communal thing, you know? Even you allowing them the opportunity to share that and recognize those things brought you a sense of joy. So joy's relational. It's, you know, and I think it's infectious.
Yeah, it is very much relational, very much infectious, and very much something that you have in that kind of connection with other people.
Yeah.
Right? It's when you're engaged with people in some way that joy finds its way through even the difficulties.
Right.
You know, definitely through the circumstances where you're sharing those things together, like I did with my mom, like you did with your grandpa, or we do with one another.
Yeah.
You know, and it's funny that it's connected so often to difficulty. Right? I mean, isn't it? It's like,
Yeah.
no, I think of times where my wife and I have had great times, vacations or things that have been, oh, this has been so wonderful. And yeah, those were joyful, but also there's those other times.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, depending on like what the intersection is, right? Like, is joy being intersected with a great memory, a vacation? Is it with a difficult season? Is it alongside somebody else, right? And it's those things that you kind of like anchor yourself to that make it memorable or make it deeper, you know? And so, I love that you brought that out. That's really cool.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you for some questions while I open my phone and try and get to my notes eventually.
Yeah.
Did you have any things that jumped out to you that you wanted to talk about just regarding that?
When I was listening to the sermon, I kind of wanted you to go a little bit more into consent versus control. And I was like, I feel like that could have been a whole sermon in itself. And I'm sure you probably were thinking that too. But I loved the idea of consent, because in my small group we've been talking a lot about obedience and what that looks like and the fruit that comes from that. And so when you said consent, it made me think a lot about obedience. And so maybe there's a parallel there, or maybe there's not, but maybe just elaborating a little bit more about what you were kind of trying to get to with there.
Yeah, I kind of came to that place where putting into some practical methods of how do you develop gratitude in our lives.
Got it.
And I did the stop, look, and go, right? And so the idea is we want to stop and be present in the circumstances that we are in. And sometimes my first reaction is to take control of the circumstances. I know. High five. Yeah.
I mean, high five. I'm not sure we should be high-fiving about that.
We can relate.
Yes, we're relating.
We want to control that circumstance instead of sitting in it. And sometimes that idea of consent is I'm consenting to letting God work in my life through the circumstances over me taking control over that circumstances. The example that came to my mind in that was Christ in the garden, where he sat there and said, Father, if it be your will, let this pass from me, but nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. There was consent and not taking control of a circumstance. He was actually sitting with that feeling and allowing that to develop him. Then later, Hebrews would say that though he were a son, he learned obedience through the things that he suffered. Speaking of Jesus, right? So there's that idea of obedience connected to consent and willingness to sit in that time of suffering was all part of relinquishing his control and giving it in a place to God, consenting. And here, we're talking about consenting to God, but sometimes joy is consenting to the moment and the situation, right? So it might not be in prayer consenting to release something to God. It might be sitting with your spouse consenting to not try and fix this with the quick answer, talking to myself here, right? Trying to, I'm going to make this all better by giving you this, and instead consenting to be present in this circumstance and let the moment be something that you experience instead of manipulate.
Yeah, that presence really resonates with me, especially for people who have the tendency to want to be in control, right? The illusion of control.
That's it.
Yeah, and I recently did this fitness challenge, and like 2 of the days they asked us to do yoga, and for a type A or someone who's controlled, that's just completely out, right, of my comfort zone. I'm like, you want me to be quiet in my head, like I pray already, like you want me to not do something, right? So like, but it really hones in your skill of being present and just allowing things to come in and come out, right? And that practice of allowing your breath to come in and have it leave and let it stay as long as it needs to. And the same thing with like thoughts or worries, like allow it, recognize it, and then exhale it, right? And like that, what presence allows for an individual and what perspective it gives you and what understanding it gives you is just one that I need to practice a little bit more often.
Yeah. And being a person who wants to control and consenting to these experiences does not mean relinquishing any kind of control at all. In other words, it doesn't mean we'd lose our voice, right? No. It doesn't mean we lose our ability to have involvement in things, but it's speaking about in the moment of those things being able to identify when we need to step back, when we need to wait. Yeah. And the thing that I think robs us of joy and the idea of control and consent is the inability to be present, like the moments with my mom. If I was just trying to, okay, what does she need right now? Okay, let's fix the pillow. Let's get the medication. Let's go get this. Let's go this. I would have lost the opportunity to just be present there, to consent to, I'm just going to let go of those things. I want to be present so that I can actually be grateful for what's happening. Because you can't be grateful if you're in that work control mode, right? You're too frantic it's really difficult to show gratitude if you're too busy trying to make things happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's kind of the idea of consent and control. And because it's not lack of control, it's relinquishing control, which
Yeah.
is actually you taking control of relinquishing control.
And I think that's so freeing, right? You
Mm-hmm.
think about it and then you think about words like consent and obedience, and there's such a stigma attached to those words that they're weak, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or that there is no growth in those things, or you're losing your identity. And it's such the opposite if you step into those.
Yeah.
You know, when you're like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? There's so much freedom in those,
Yeah.
in those actions.
Yeah.
Ones that you can't necessarily just talk about, but you have to experience and step into firsthand. And you
Yeah.
can sit with a friend and tell them about how you're living in obedience or relinquishing control, but until they sort of take those steps for themselves, it's different experience.
And the week before, I talked about participation.
Yeah.
Right? And really, that's the only way to gratitude.
Right.
Is by participation, right? It's involvement with that gives you the now I'm grateful for because I was with, right? Whether I sat with,
Right.
or I talked with, or I was, those things. That participation with people, with life, gives us the ability to show gratitude. I heard this amazing thing today in the cohort that I'm with, and I just thought of I'm grateful. And when you talked about I'm so thankful we're free to this, I'm so thankful that Jesus has given me the freedom to be wrong.
Amen.
Right? It's like, I'm so thankful that I can talk to you,
Yeah.
and maybe I'll say something stupid. Peter did it all the time. Why can't I, right? It's like, why can't I just have that freedom? I'm so grateful for the freedom in Christ that includes being open, being wrong, being vulnerable, because
Right.
that's what's necessary to have joy.
Yeah.
Right? I have to be vulnerable, open to those things so that I can be joyful.
Yeah, and that those things can live together. You know what I mean? Or like joy isn't exclusive of sadness. Like
Yeah.
a lot of the times we're experiencing those things hand in hand, and often it's difficult to articulate the fact that you are feeling multiple things in your one self, right? But those things aren't mutually exclusive. I could be weeping about the passing of my grandfather and then also dancing with my aunts, because that's, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
those things can live together, and that's okay too. So that
Yeah.
those like concepts of like feeling wrong about stuff, like you could do that. You can be sad and you can also have joy. You can be wrong and also, be inquisitive. There's lots of those things that can live together, and I think there's a lot of freedom in that too.
Yeah. The freedom to explore and be vulnerable is so important. I think Brene Brown is the one who says that vulnerability or joy is one of the most difficult things because it requires vulnerability.
Absolutely.
Right. And we oftentimes, I don't know if I went into it this much, but we oftentimes, when we're experiencing great joy, have this looming, oh no.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Have you
It's too good right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The other shoe's going to drop
Yeah.
because it's too good.
Yeah.
Right. And she talks about why that is, and that the fact that, this idea of formidable future that we don't control. And so what we want to do is minimize the hurt we're going to feel
Right.
when we get let down. So we'll let ourselves down now thinking it will help minimize the pain later.
Right.
And it doesn't. And all it does is rob us of the opportunity to enjoy what's
Yep.
happening.
And be present.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Being present. And it's, I don't know,
Yeah.
I
I
know-
think we all do that too often. And it's one thing that you're like, oh, I figured it out this time. I'm not going to do it again next time. But then the circumstances change and the characters change.
Yeah.
And here we are again, self-sabotaging and not allowing ourselves to experience things fully as they were meant to be experienced, And
Yeah.
instead we get in the way of ourselves and in the way of what God has in store for us to experience. And such a thing. For sure.
And think how good it is to have people in our lives
Yeah.
to be able to name that when it's happening.
Right. Right.
Right? To be able to say, hey, let's not rob this moment.
Right.
Right? Let's be present. Let's enjoy this. You know, because the craziest things happen, you know, when something fills our hearts with joy. And recently we got a video of my granddaughter laughing, and I'll play it to you later because, oh man, it just echoes
so
in my soul.
good.
Yeah, that little laugh, and it just goes on, and I could hear that forever. And I hear that, and I think, oh, I wish I would have enjoyed my kids more when they laughed. And I just did it. Right? I just sabotaged
the
what
moment.
was happening
Right.
by thinking, oh, I should have done this. Or, oh man, I hope I can be there more to hear her do that. Instead of just be here now.
Yeah.
Just enjoy this now. Be present with that and take that for what it is instead of sabotaging it. 'Cause
Everyone else is going to sabotage for you, so don't be a part of that bandwagon. I remember when you shared, you were like, you guys are going to get tired of how many videos I'm sharing of my grandkids. No, share away. Be bold in your joy, and I think
Yeah.
that's important too. Like, we need to be confident in our joy, and that's okay too, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think a lot of the times, we're surrounded with people who have different stories or lived experiences than us that sometimes are put a damper on things, and that's
Yeah.
all they talk about.
Yeah.
And it makes you, at least sometimes me, question, like, should I then even share the wonderful things that are happening in my life?
Yeah.
And I really have had to kind of like put those thoughts aside, because I can still be joyful and share the amazing things that are happening, not in a boastful way, right? Obviously in a respectful way, but I can continue to push the narrative of joy amidst all of the crazy and
Yeah.
ugly, heavy things that are going on, not being naive, being real,
Yeah.
but I can still push the narrative of joy if that's the truth that I'm living.
Yeah, and I think it's such an important part of being human.
Yeah.
Being able to express joy. And I know many times, some of us growing up in church, the idea of sharing those things is considered a boasting, or oh, you're putting yourself forward. It's not wrong to put yourself forward in those areas of joy or express those things. It's not wrong to share what things are happening in you that you're excited about, and it shouldn't be squashed.
Right.
Right. And unfortunately, for so many people, even this person I was talking to, this whole church experience that they'd gone through had been so controlling, so just constricting them to be able to express themselves freely in the things that they did enjoy, whether it's going out with friends, seeing movies. It's like, oh, don't share that you saw Harry Potter because,
Right.
Harry Potter is, you can't do that. It's like
Yeah.
all these things that, we might look at and laugh and say, oh, that's so silly, but it's so much a part of so many people's stories. And that just put in them a damper that I still see with them today.
Right.
Where they're just afraid to let go, afraid because someone's going to tell you no. Someone's going to put that, don't do that. And I do recognize I do that. And thank you for the permission to share the videos with you because I got them.
Be ready for Sunday, folks.
No, it isn't important. And being able to have that freedom to share the things that make you joyful, I hope are contagious,
Yeah.
to other people and saying they want to do that. I'm coming to a place now too where I'm wanting to lift people up and hopefully allow them to find joy where they're at. I'm taking it on myself. I've got this, okay, how do I combat COVID in a way that's going to be, if I can't hang out with people like I want to, then I'm going to text like a madman, right? I'm going to send out these things and say, hey man, you're doing a great job. I appreciate you in this. I really love you for this. I want to do this. I sent one out today to a friend and just say, I know you're going through hard times, but I see you.
Yeah.
Gets me emotional, right?
Yeah.
I see you.
Yeah.
And we want to be seen, right? And I want you to know that God sees you and the things you're going through. I want you to be able to find joy where you're at. In the hard times, and the difficulties. I want you to find that. And if I can be a reason for gratitude,
Right.
then use it as a stepping stone to keep climbing.
And you wouldn't be able to do that if you weren't present,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Like you wouldn't be able to bear witness to others if you weren't present.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important. Like without being present, then it also keeps you from claiming that joy in somebody
Yeah.
else's life or giving them, being grateful for them, and then that sparking joy.
And yeah,
Yeah.
spark joy. And that's what's so hard right now is being present, right? Because
Right,
we're
I
being
know.
robbed of that
Yeah.
in so many ways. And so how do we lean into that?
Yeah.
And we have to find ways, I have a circle of friends. You guys are part of that circle. That's why we don't have masks
Mm-hmm. Here,
on,
yeah.
right? But I did a lesson yesterday and this morning, masks are on, I'm trying to have this, be protective of people's health. And I want to reach out to people, but I can't say, hey, let's go out and grab dinner,
Right.
with everyone I think about. I can't say, hey, let's meet here. I mean, it's like sometimes, well, you guys know it, the whole works thing. It's like, we've got a workspace.
See you
Yeah.
online.
Yeah. It's one of those things. And so presence is one of those things where we have to be creative to try and
Right.
connect to people.
That's exciting though too, because I think I've used this analogy with a few other people too. Is the opportunity to be creative right now is so high, and the opportunity to take risks are welcomed. People are welcome to take risks right now. Like
Yeah.
like you said, we can get it wrong right now.
Yeah.
And no one's gonna come chasing after you or being super critical because everybody is trying new time. And my favorite thing to tell freshmen were, you're the new kid, but so is everybody else. And that's what's going on right now.
Yeah, we're all the
Everyone
new
is the
kid.
new kid, right? Like everyone thinks that they're looking at you, but no one's looking at you. They're trying to figure it out for themselves. So like try new things, be creative with how you're engaging and building relationship and community, virtual community, what have you.
Yeah.
Like take risks, take chances. You can take a safe risk. You can take a healthy risk. But yeah, we're all the new kid right now. And I think that's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is exciting. And without, like you said, that connection, it's going to be real hard to find joy.
Right.
Right. And so we have to find ways to connect to people so that we can be grateful for those things. I'm grateful, for the online conversation I
Right.
had today, even though it was online and, we'd rather be in person. Grateful for those times where I can connect with people in whatever ways I can. Finding ways. I know that whenever I go to Starbucks, because I haven't been going as often, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to just pay it forward. I'm going to pay for the person
Yeah.
behind me and just try and do those things. And it's happened to me. It was so funny because Corrine was sharing with me. She was taking our lunch break and she was at Starbucks and she was like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to pay it forward. I'm going to thinking about that. And she pulled up to the window and someone, oh, the person in front of you paid it forward for it. And she's like, no, what happened? Right. And so she was so excited about doing that, being able to do it. I almost did it today, but the car behind me, they were taking so long. They weren't even done with their order. So
Oh,
I couldn't even pay for it. It's like, that teaches you don't take too long and wait.
You left them a note instead.
Yeah, I would have if you would have. No. But yeah, finding ways so that we can connect, because we got to be grateful for those things.
Yeah.
And that's how gratitude is developed, by connection, by presence. And so we have to find ways to make that happen at this time. What else you got on those notes? Otherwise, I can shoot some questions at you.
Yeah, let's see what I got.
Pull my notes up here.
Yeah. There's just a lot of things that I was like, oh man, I can really relate to what you're saying. And I loved giving thanks in all circumstances. That's not a natural thing to do.
Yeah.
It really isn't, and even though I had this amazing revelation, when I was with my grandpa and I learned all of these things, I guarantee you when I meet that crossroad again, it's not going to be the same. And I'm going to go through a whole other series of questioning and gratitude, right? But like that posture of always being in gratitude is so countercultural or so not natural.
Yeah.
And
I talked about how I used to think someone had told me, I think, it means to be grateful for everything, right? And that
Right.
wasn't.
No, yeah.
So, let's press into that. Finding, thanks in all things, being grateful in all things how, or what are some things that you can do to, when you're in a circumstance that's difficult, find gratitude, find thanks? You know, you're working at school and everything is online, and I imagine that's some kind of silent hell sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Having to deal with that. So how do you, and maybe throwing you on a spot here,
Yeah.
how do you find gratitude? How can you be thankful in the difficulties of online schooling right now?
I think the opportunity in the difficult, right? Brian and I were actually kind of talking about like that, the opportunity that comes with challenge. You can decide how you want to approach that. And if I'm going back to what I was saying, like the opportunity right now that we have to be creative in how we're approaching challenges, similar challenges, new challenges, I think for me, I draw a lot of joy from that. I'm a problem solver. You know, whether people want me to solve their problems or not, you know, I'm already thinking about solving problems. And so that's really attractive to me. I like engaging in critical thinking. I like engaging in those types of things, and they give me joy. So the opportunity to do and exercise those muscles that maybe I hadn't before brings me joy, and I'm grateful for that.
So do you consciously think, I'm grateful for this, or do you have to like take this mind and go, you know what? I'm thankful for this. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think that's difficult because when you're in it, you're not always like,
Mindful of
of how I'm processing. And so maybe even after this, I'm going to be more mindful so then I can share my experience with others, right? But I think anytime I find myself frustrated, there's just way too many things to be grateful for, you know? And even in my work, I love what I do. I love being in education. I love the opportunity in education right now to think critically and think outside of what we've historically done. But I'm not sure. What does that kind of look like for you?
I think in a similar way, you know, I've always wanted to reimagine church and see what it could be, and it's kind of happening, you know, and it's forcing me to think about how I communicate and ways to communicate that are different. I mean, everything this has been a learning experience. All the gadgets and things that we had to switch and make it work is all learning. I mean, I'm not real grateful for all those things, but I'm grateful for being put in an opportunity where I have to rethink and reimagine church again. I'm grateful for the people around me who embolden me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm grateful for the opportunity to do that we have at Genesis that has been here. And there's so many things that are changing, and even in our community. And what I'm finding, what I'm giving thanks in are things like this, right? With you here.
Yeah.
I mean, if it wasn't for all this probably wouldn't have happened.
Oh, yeah, definitely not.
And so grateful for this, because this is, I mean, we're always going somewhere, and we're not always sure where it is, but being grateful that the work is taking place. And that's one of the things I shared with my friend is like, you don't see it, but I see it. I see movement in your life, and it's almost like, you know, we're living in the sea of God like fish and unaware that water's all around us. You know, we're something's going on and we're a part of it, and I'm grateful that that's happening and trying to step into it more. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to be grateful for, is just the change.
Yeah.
As hard as it's been, and the people that have left and the people that have come,
Right.
and the changes that are happening, and people have walked into this building during pandemic and have said, I need to be here. People who've never been here at Genesis have just said, I need to be here. And I was like, well, come in then. You know, come on in. And it's like, wow, that happened.
Yeah.
You know, I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful for those kinds of opportunities that I see and trust are going to continue to happen.
Yeah. And I like what you said about you've always been excited about the opportunity to reimagine church. I've always been excited about the opportunity to reimagine education, right? That's kind of like
Yeah.
what I went into it for. I'm like,
Yeah, we're gonna change
grassroots, we're
this.
going to change things.
It's a revolution. It's like, oh, it is.
Yeah. And I think so often, right? Like when we pray those prayers, we have no idea what we're asking for.
Yeah,
We have
or
no
how it's gonna
idea.
show up.
Yes, and I said to Brian and a few other people too, when the pandemic started and I was praying to God, expand my capacity to love in ways that I have never experienced. Help me be creative and show me how I can love. And my grandfather got really ill. And I learned to love to a level that I have never experienced. Ever. Right?
Yeah.
Everything is like to a level we didn't know we were going to experience right now. But when we're present and when we're prayerful and when we show up to things with the right posture, God is going to make amazing things happen for you within yourself and your spirit, and then for others to witness too. And that's, I guess, the hope is like stepping into the uncomfortability, right? Like being okay with the change and the challenge and knowing that there's growth in that, because that's one of the truths, right? Like he's not going to bring you through that for no reason. He's not bringing us through this for no reason. So there's a zillion reasons, and we're just being invited to be a part of helping people see it, right?
Yeah. And every difficulty is that, right?
Right.
Every hardship is opportunity.
Right.
To learn, to grow, to develop, and all these things. And definitely a pandemic. I think, and it's so hard because you want to do something, and then you might like try, and then it's like, okay, that's not going to work.
Right.
I want to try. Oh, that's not going to work. And so you just kind of, again, keep trying and failing until some things connect, you know. And we're all struggling at it in so many ways, but that's the opportunity before us.
Yeah.
When it first, the pandemic first broke out, I thought, okay, how can we be the church? And, we're going to reach out to the community. It's like, well, we can't do that because blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And, we'll do that. Oh, can't do that because blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay, I'm still leaning into it.
Yeah.
Right? Still, okay, well, we're going to do what we can do. We're going to try and find ways to connect people. And I have to start with myself. Because I don't want to just be, okay, here I am, I'm going to give sermons, right?
Yeah.
I want to be personal. I want to connect with as many people as possible.
Right.
And it's forced me to be more personable in that ways, because that's how I have to do it now. It's easier to do it on a Sunday in front of people. It's harder to do it on a text to one person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it takes a lot longer because I'm dyslexic, and then I have to read it over again. It's like, no, don't want to say that. But
I think a lot of us have realized that during this time. We're like, I'm having to do this a lot
Yeah.
more, and I'm not great at it.
Autocorrect is not always your friend.
Yeah, it's not always correct.
Yeah, every time I say Gil, it comes out girl. I don't know how many times
no.
it says, hey, girl. That was supposed to be Gil, but he's
But
gracious.
you get it, yeah.
What else you got? Any other thoughts there?
Let's see. Don't look at my notes, Sam. My goodness. What do you got for
mine
me?
disappeared, so it's hard to read them out again because they came down. I think this passage in Hebrews was powerful for me. Looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. The depth of emotion that Jesus found by the consent to endure the cross. I think about joy as something that we need to find and work for. That it's not just, here's joy, it just fell in your lap. That joy is something that you have to consciously put effort to obtain. And so I think, okay, tomorrow's Thanksgiving. Me and holidays have a thing. And I think part of it is due to, again, the fact that holidays for me used to be the busiest time. Being an assistant at a church, it was up to me to get the music together,
Yeah.
it was get all the blah 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 blah. Christmas, I just wasn't around Christmas, right? I had to get the Christmas music, I had to get the music for the kids, I had to put the production, had to do this, and so it was just like, it became something that I just like didn't like, and so holidays now become this, okay, gotta get busy, gotta do these things, and so I need to make the conscious effort when my family comes over. I need to be very present with them, right? I need to make opportunity to do what I can for them, with them, so that I can enjoy them. And I have to put aside that bah humbug attitude that I get at the holidays. And you wouldn't think, he's a pastor, he's not supposed to be. Like, sorry, just being honest with you. It's one of these things Corrine and I have talked about, how I really do get in a funk
Yeah.
during the holiday season just because of the pressure to produce.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't want to. And it's kind of given me a freedom. I can't produce a whole lot in a pandemic, right? So I'm going to just be present with the small group of people that are at my house
Right.
there. And I need to be that so that I can enjoy it, right? I need to have that kind of attitude with life. I need to work at it so that I can enjoy it.
Yeah.
I need to be grateful for these things, the opportunities, the small things, to learn how to connect this tablet to that thing over the Wi-Fi so that we
Yeah.
can be, I need to, hey, I learned something today. You know, I'm grateful we're live.
Yeah, there you
It
go.
almost didn't happen. But yeah, joy has a cost to it.
Absolutely.
And you thinking something?
Yeah, I'm trying to think like what the cost has been and at different points, and like, yeah, you're biting your lip or not being Scrooge, or like your
Yeah.
comfortability or your natural tendency to want to be by yourself underneath a blanket. You know,
yeah.
like it is, like, don't be mistaken, joy is such a beautiful thing, but it's also hard work.
Yeah.
You know, it's not the natural tendency of the world to be like, hey, you know, like,
Yeah.
yes, this is awesome. That's not, especially right now.
Yeah.
Joy is not a common thing, and people, I've had a lot of people, you know, say like, how can you be so happy when all of this is going on?
Yeah.
You know, and that's hard because people
Yeah.
are also living within their own subsectors of their mind or
Yeah.
you know, reality too. But yeah, joy is hard work.
Yeah. And complacency is easy.
Yep.
Right, and we get comfortable in
Right.
complacency,
Right.
and we mistake complacency for happiness. We exchange joy for contentment. Right, joy is waiting, but you got to work to it. It's like, oh, I'm going to be content to not do anything,
Right.
and we end up losing joy. You know, a circumstance in my life, just to be, you know, a little transparent in my relationship with Corrine. It's easy for me to take her for granted because she's been in my life for so long, and I know she loves me, and I know she's going to be there, and so it's easy for me to be reading something, doodling something online, checking something out, and take for granted that she's going to just be there, and then go, you know, yeah, oh, I love you, kiss, goodbye, everything. And then when the tension comes up that I feel like she's not happy with me because